Welcome to Solution Focused World. I'm Joe George.
Today we're talking to John Henden. And John, how do you like to be introduced?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wear various hats, but solution focused performance coach, trainer, and author. Well, we mainly do training in solution focused, either solution focused basics courses or specialist courses in suicide prevention or severe trauma recovery. And also for organizations, do performance coaching for senior executives and managers, etc. And yes, a range of other things as and when requested. So sometimes we do team facilitation and dealing with difficult problems, mediation, etc. But mostly it's performance coaching and training.
John, why solution-focused brief therapy?
I had then had a career in the NHS as a practitioner and a manager. And in 1993, while working in a community mental health centre, I saw this little note came through, with various trainings advertised, and one was a 2-day introduction to solution-focused brief therapy, led by none other than Steve DeShazer himself. Yes, this 2-day workshop held in London at the Institute of Child Health, I think it was.
And you said that was 1993?
1993.
Wow, you've been rolling around in it ever since. So you've seen different incarnations as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I was often say to people on my training courses when I mention this, that on the way back on the train, I was reflecting on what I'd heard over those 2 days. And I thought, I can see the potential for this approach, both for normal sort of emotional distress issues, but also for the extremes like suicide prevention and also for severe trauma recovery.
Do you use solution-focused thinking in your own life?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yes. I mean, when our kids now, they're in their 30s, but when they were at school, and having problems, they would come to me and say, "Oh, Dad, I'm struggling with this. What do you think I should do?" And I would say something like, "Well, what's worked so far before or whatever? What's worked recently?" And they say, "Dad, you're counseling me again." I say, "Okay, we'll leave that aside, but answer the question. What has worked?" And so that would work. So in family life and in my social life and people I meet, I just have a solution focused mindset.
And along those lines, what are the 3 most important things people should learn to master to use solution-focused thinking?
I came up with this idea about 10 years ago, what I call for the triple twins of success for when working with challenging issues. And those triple twins are curiosity and creativity, persistence and patience, and the third set of twins is hope and optimism. So if we have those 3 twins, if you like, in our thinking and as our stance, then clients cannot not sort things out and reach their own conclusions or build their own solutions.
Everyone brings previous experiences into what they do. And you mentioned existentialism and several other things. What was your initial theoretic approach and before solution focus, and how did it influence your current application?
I was essentially a person-centered or humanistic therapist with this strong existential leaning. So the idea of helping people find meaning and purpose to their lives, and on a very basic level, the reason we get out of bed in the morning is really important. And I see that as an essential part of emotional well-being. Incidentally, I like to get away from this idea of mental illness, the mental illness, mental health continuum, because that feeds straight into biomedical model psychiatry, which I worked for as a loyal servant for many years. But I completely reject that now. And I think it's better to think in terms of emotional well-being and emotional distress, and that continuum. That I think is more healthy and more helpful to people.
What fields beyond counseling do you feel best aligned with solution-focused thinking?
Counseling, I think, as I mentioned earlier, performance coaching, and I enjoy working with senior managers, senior execs, and CEOs who have reached a point in their lives or in their organizations where they're a bit stuck or wanting new ideas, new perspectives, etc. And so working with them in a performance coaching way, and sometimes I that can convert to life coaching, and that I think is the main application. Yeah.
Is there any specific field that you do that the most with? Like you imply, I infer a business, but I'm not sure.
Yes, mainly. Well, it's evenly split actually between private companies and public sector organizations like local authorities, for instance.
Were there any moments when you felt solution focused brief therapy wasn't working for you?
No, I don't think so. We may have to slow it down, or we may have to say to the client, well, I just sense you're not ready yet for change. So maybe we ought to make another appointment for, say, May 2022. For me, the customer has got to be the customer. If we start working harder than the client, something's going wrong there. So this idea of pushing away can be quite helpful. And of course, that works paradoxically often. They want to then pull back, so that can be helpful. So yes, generally I think so. And, with patience and persistence, even with the most intractable situations and stuck clients, I think that wins through, I found, in the end.
You might already have this, like a quick answer for this next one, since you have your own business. If you had to come up with an advertising campaign for solution focused brief therapy, what would your slogan be?
Come to an organization which looks at what works, in quotes, for you. Something like that.
Is you've been doing these for a long time. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Is there anything that I missed?
I was training various organizations in solution-focused suicide prevention. And I had loads of handouts, and I was doing some work for the British military at one point, the Army Welfare Service. And they were really up for this. Solution focus is a real fit to military culture. And at one of the workshops, a couple of the lads said, "Oh, very well, this, John, you've given us loads of handouts, but you've got to write a book on this. We need a book, or the world needs a book." So this is it. And this is now the second edition. And this has sold very well throughout the world. And it's a one-stop shop handbook for solution-focused practitioners who want to work with clients who are suicidal. And it has been achieving zero suicide for over 20 years now, which is absolutely, that is just so heartening for me. And when I think of all that midnight oil I burned, to finish it off, it's, to hear that feedback is really worth it.
This opens up so many questions because, like when I was talking to Evan, for example, he clarified solution focus is about change.
Yes.
There are certain things that it doesn't work for. And he used suicide as an example. He said it's not an assessment model. It's not something that you can use to assess the situation, you have to do a different line of thinking and a different line of questioning. And how does suicide prevention align with solution focused thinking?
The whole idea of risk assessment, management, and medication, which is something I used to work with in mental health systems, and as a manager used to preach it to my staff and insist they did proper assessments, etc. Solution focus just turns that all on its head and shoves it to the side, because the solution focused interviewing technique with people who are acutely suicidal, it's a risk reduction approach. And so I can have someone sat before me who's fidgeting away, looking really concerned, wanting to be dead by tomorrow morning, who by the end of the session is curious and has a sense of hope that things can be better. So the risk reduces so much so that we can say, okay, let's make an appointment for where are we today? It's Tuesday today. Let's make an appointment for Friday or Monday, and we'll carry on working on etc. etc. So it suits it fits so well, and of course, biomedical psychiatry and lots of other models lose so many people they see to suicide, because people who are acutely suicide give us as counselors and therapists one chance. So if we say, oh, well, let's spend 2 sessions to get to know each other, they'll be dead within a couple of days in many cases. So we need to get to work right away. And, I say that in the book here. One chapter talks about the crucial first 10 minutes. You've got to connect, get rapport, trust, and a working relationship in that first 10 minutes. And that's a challenge.
Totally. So basically hook them with hope and then keep them coming.
Hook them with hope and possibilities other than the suicide option. The other specialty is beating combat stress, which is again solution focused. And this is this came out of my work with the military. I had the honor at one stage of having trained every single army welfare worker within the British Army in solution focus.
Really?
Yeah, across the whole world, in various establishments. And so again, some of the lads said, you got to pull this in a book. So that's what this is. And it's a one-stop shop handbook, both for practitioners, but also lots of military veterans from many campaigns across the world have this on their bedside lockers and use it as a reference book. And it covers all 6 sections or 6 areas of their concern. So 3 of them are dealing with triggers, flashbacks, and intrusive thoughts. And it's all in there, loads of solution-focused techniques. So that's good. And while you're in the marketplace of buying books, you'll need the civilian version of that one, which is this, which is What It Takes to Thrive: Techniques for Severe Trauma Recovery. And there's even more techniques, and there's 140 techniques in that book. And again, it's a one-stop shop handbook. So these are what I was thinking of on the train, coming back from that Steve DeShazer workshop. I thought there's applications for this approach for the tough end of emotional distress that a lot of psychiatry avoids, to the detriment of the patients.
I was shocked when I first got trained to realize I thought there was one way to do it. And then the more I had the luxury of being able to watch different people do it, I realized that there are set principles that are followed, but you can put them together differently.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Do you have, is there an underlying theme in those 3 books that really are there? Does it really go back to your three sets of twins in each of them?
No, they aren't. Well, these 2, the ones on trauma, aren't about theory. There's maybe a page to talk about theory, it's a practical, hands-on, how to do it, solution-focused handbook. So there's no theory well, I mean, I don't talk about the theory.
Mhm.
It's like on the 2-day workshops on training people in these techniques. I'd say if you're interested in theory, we're not going to talk about it today. Today is a workshop. I will teach you these techniques, and you will test them out in your 2s and 3s, and then you can go off and practice them. And usually on day 2, people come back. I always ask the question, since we talked about stuff yesterday, and with regard to what you learned, what's better? And they say, last night I used it on, X or Y. I had a phone call and I asked them this such and such solution focused question. So yes, they're very practical. So the theoretical underpinning, I try and stick to the Milwaukee school, if you like, as much as I possibly can. I know there've been various sort of departures since then and tangents, but I tend to stick to that, although I'm very much influenced by a lot of what Brief do in terms of best hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I with clients, whether it's coaching clients or therapy clients, I tend to ask what's their best hope within the first 3 or 4 minutes. And I didn't used to do that. I used to wait till sort of about 20, 30 minutes and then ask, the miracle question, or fast forwarding the DVD and those sort of, future focusing questions.